There's something about the Mosquito, isn't there? It's got a tremendous presence. I mean, you just can't ignore it. Well, I think the FB6 epitomised the Mosquito's versatility, didn't it? I mean, it could do practically anything.
Welcome to the first of our Hangar Talk episodes on the Fighting High podcast. In a hangar at the Havilland Aircraft Museum sits a Mosquito fighter bomber of which the first part, a fuselage, arrived nearly 50 years ago. Wings came later, and decades of patient, skilled work have brought it all back to life. The Mosquito was one of the most remarkable aircraft of the Second World War, fast, versatile, and built largely of wood, and restoring one is a challenge that combines history, engineering, craftsmanship, and no small amount of determination. To talk about the restoration of the museum's Mosquito fighter bomber, how it was done, who was involved, and what it tells us about the aircraft itself, I'm delighted to be joined by Ian Thirsk. Ian is a former head of collections at the Royal Air Force Museum and today a leading authority on the Mosquito, volunteering his time and expertise at the de Havilland Aircraft Museum. Ian, welcome to the Fighting High podcast.
Thank you very much.
Very good to have you here. I understand the fuselage for your fighter bomber arrived back in 1978 and some wings came along a couple of years later. Can you tell me its journey from that point?
Yeah, I mean, the fuselage had arrived from Holland in 1978. Stuart Howe, who was one of the original founder directors of the museum, he's the one who actually located it. He's the one that really began this project. And he thought, we must find a wing and make it into a complete aeroplane again. We found a wing in Israel on a kibbutz at Beit Alpha, one of the old Israeli Air Force Sea Mosquitoes that were retired in 1960. And that was brought back to the UK in 1980. It was in very poor condition, but there was enough there as a basis for a rebuild. We got it back in about July 1980. Pressure of work with other projects meant we delayed it for a fair period, but in that interim period we were doing work on the B-35 Mosquito, the prototype. But we were gathering components as well, thinking, how can we make it to a complete machine? We found a fuselage entry door in Canada with the Canadian Warplane Heritage. We found wingtips in Australia from the Royal Australian Air Force Museum. We discovered other parts in Turkey, Australia, New Zealand. The undercarriage came from New Zealand. So it was really a case of gathering components ready to begin the major task of the build. And that started in 1985 with work on the wing by a chap called Colin Ewer, who had worked on Mosquitoes at Hatfield during 1945 as a young lad, and he had a great deal of experience, and he kind of guided that project forward. But it was about a 40-year period, but it was on and off with other priorities that turned up. I would say it's taken us probably about 40 years in total to rebuild it. It's been longer than that, but you saw the result for yourself. But it's been a long journey.
It's very much so. It's a very much an international piece of kit, really, with bits coming from all over the world.
Oh, well, yeah, completely. And it's the only example of the FB6 anywhere in Europe. So it's quite special, really. And they produce more of that version than any other, almost 2,300. So it's wonderful for us to have an example of that. Probably I think the FB6 epitomised the Mosquito's versatility, didn't it? I mean, it could do practically anything. So to have that is a wonderful thing.
So, biggest technical challenges your team faced putting it together?
I think really the biggest challenge we had was assembling the fuselage and the wing when they'd been restored. It was working out the process for doing that, getting the equipment to do it. We had to acquire a lifting beam, fuselage lifting beam. We got that from the RAF Museum at Stafford. They had a surplus one. Basically the process, the procedure without breaking it, really. That was probably the biggest one. The other one, of course, was parts procurement and rebuilding components we didn't have. We didn't have any leading edge structure for the wing. We had no flaps. We had no trailing edge shroud box, which is a fairly large component just behind the back of the rear spar. They were made up from original drawings for us by a chap called Jerry Mears, who'd been an ex-de Havilland apprentice. And one of these guys that is a great all-rounder. He was a woodworker, a metal worker, and he really led that particular part of the process on. They were the biggest things, the technical side of it. It was also trying to establish the modification status for the aeroplane. I mean, it last flew in 1950, so it was up to the latest mod status. We're restoring it or presenting it as a May 1945 aeroplane, so it meant in some ways demodding it, going back to how it would have been 5 years previously, because we like to be as authentic as we possibly can with what we present to the public. And that part of the journey has been time consuming, but challenging and fascinating too, to be honest.
Were you relying on a lot of original drawings, archives? I mean, did you have to bring modern techniques into it?
A bit of both, really. We did use a large number of original drawings. British Aerospace, of course, used to operate on IR299, the T Mark III Mosquito from Chester. We had a very good relationship with the crew that maintained that aeroplane, and they had they had a cabinet full of microfilm Mosquito drawings, which they used to provide copies to us if we need anything for that. We relied on the official Air Ministry air publications because they're vital in terms of following exactly the right procedure for dismantling and reassembly, the right sequence of events. Plus, occasionally veterans' notes. We had one amazing donation from a chap who had attended the wartime de Havilland Instructional School Mosquito Technical Lecture Notes or lecture course at Hatfield. And that was incredible. It just gave you a rundown into the basic structure of the aeroplane, how it's produced, how it's put together, how to dismantle and to reassemble. It was generic really across most marks, but it did focus on the FB6. And that has been invaluable. It's been absolutely tremendous. And also we had a chap come in, he brought in his original fabricing and doping notes for mosquitoes. I mean, that's been helpful too. So yeah, a variety of things. But latterly, we've been relying a lot on 3D printing and CAD drawing of components. A couple of the guys are very, very talented in that respect, and they've manufactured parts we don't have. For example, the heater box controls in the cockpit, lots of complex mechanisms for that. They've managed to make those for us. The fuel cocks have been made from 3D printing. So yeah, a variety of things really. It sounds very simple, doesn't it? But it's a bit more to it than that. But
Well, yes, I'm sure. But what's already coming across to me very clearly is this is very much a collaboration across
completely.
other organisations and
Totally.
and the community, being able to restore this and developing new techniques as well. I remember when I was there prior to it being wheeled out, there was a young chap in the cockpit working on it. You're passing on a lot of this knowledge onto the next generation to carry it on.
We certainly are, and that is one thing that really does concern me, is being able to do that. I'm trying to recruit as many younger people as I possibly can. I think you probably met young Harry, who's with us. He's about 18, and he's now got an apprenticeship at MBDA. But we've had other young people come through, and they've gone on to jobs in the industry, which has been tremendous. But keeping that core of youngsters there, because they're the future. I mean, I was about, 18, 19 when I began work there. I never stopped. I mean, I'm 64 now, and I was the youngest on the team. I'm now one of the oldest. We have to keep the succession going, really. It's vital.
Yeah. So who makes up your team? What skills do they bring?
Okay, well, over the years, the team obviously has people have come and gone, but it's worth mentioning. I mentioned Colin Ewer at the very beginning, who'd worked on wings at Hatfield. We've also had a chap, Stuart Howe, you're probably aware of him. He's the chap I say who originally found the aeroplane, and he was instrumental in driving it forward in the early days. But over the last few years, we've had a chap called Bob Glasby, and Bob had worked on the Battle of Britain Memorial flight during the early 1980s, I believe, and he'd been in the RAF on 51 Squadron for about 10 to 15 years. He brought a tremendous amount of technical skill in terms of electrical installations and some very good mechanical engineering skill as well. And he drove the reintegration and the rebirth of systems on the aeroplane. We've tried to make as much of it live as we possibly can. Also, a chap called Jerry Mears, I mentioned earlier on. He was a de Havilland apprentice with tremendous woodworking skills, metalworking skills. He's managed to manufacture parts we don't have, so he's been really, really useful. Another chap, Barry Tucker, He has pretty much a self-taught fabric man. He's learned to dope and fabric structures. He's been tremendous. They all bring a lot to the table, really. Others are just basic skills, and they just join in where they can. I do a lot of the research and technical research, trying to find information from archives, as well as a lot of fabric work on the aeroplane too.
So a lot of volunteer times going into this project.
An awful lot of volunteer time. In fact, it relies exclusively on that. I couldn't tell you how many hours they've given over the years, but the current team have been on the aeroplane for about 20 years. They come in every Sunday, the odd Thursday afternoon. Most of them are retired now, but yeah, we couldn't do it without volunteers. They're vital.
Yeah. Any standout moments of problem solving that you could direct us to?
Well, I mentioned earlier a bit about reassembling the aeroplane. That was a huge thing. The other thing too, when you reassemble you put a fuselage onto the wing of a Mosquito, or you take it off, you have to brace the structure between on the fuselage between bulkhead 2 and 3. That's a weak point in the fuselage. There's normally a floating panel which goes in between those two sections. When you lift the fuselage off the wing or put it on, you brace it with this internal jury strut. There's a period when you've got to take that out, where you actually lower it onto the wing. We were concerned that due to the age of the aeroplane, would the fuselage be able to take that load? So we sat together and talked about it, and we came up with an idea of bridging the lifting beam between bulkhead 2 and 3 with a wooden former to stop any upwards movement of the fuselage, and it worked really, really well. I mean, that was fabulous, as well as engine installation as well. That was a bit of a challenge, having to get the right kit in, working out the order you would attach the objects to everything. There's a whole host of things that we all sat down and really thought about how we're going to do this. They don't all come to mind immediately, but yes, it's been one long problem-solving challenge, really.
Yes, yeah, and I'm sure that fosters. We've talked about the teamwork, and it fosters pride in the outcome as well, in what you've achieved.
It does.
Yeah, and your passion, obviously, for the Mosquito. So, on that, so what made you fall in love with the Mosquito, Ian?
My dad worked for de Havilland's at Hatfield. He came down in the 1950s. So we lived in Hatfield, and I used to see the company-owned Mosquito, IR299, flying over the house regularly, and we were taken to open days at Hatfield. And there's something about the Mosquito, isn't there? It's got a tremendous presence. I mean, you just can't ignore it. And it really inspired me, really. It fired up my imagination. And Dad worked with many people who'd been involved with Mosquito production during the war, including people that were actually at Salisbury Hall when they were building the prototype. And they used to come round and see my mother and father in the evenings occasionally, and they'd give me tales of what went on. I went down there and was about 11-year-old and saw the prototype and just got captivated by it all, really. And I never really grew out of it. It was something I wanted to learn more about. And I think I love the technical side of it, but it's the people side of it too that I find absolutely fascinating, and the people's stories and how these things came about and the reality of it all, really. And yeah, I love it. It's something that tends to grow more and more every year, to be honest.
Well, I've caught the bug, that's for sure, because my grandfather was a Halifax and Lancaster man, so that's where I was. And I feel I'm on the verge of betraying the family and moving over to the Mosquito.
Well, you're very welcome. Come aboard.
Because it is quite remarkable, and telling the stories of the men involved has sort of been my passion. And their love of the aircraft is quite clear when you ask them about it. And yes, it's very, very dear to them, the Mosquito, flying that. If they had to, they've flown other aircraft, but if they had to go back to one and fly it again, they'd fly the Mosquito. So as we said, this aircraft's one of the most versatile in the Second World War.
Yeah.
Could you tell us a little bit more about the fighter bomber role?
Yeah, I mean, I think it epitomises the design's great versatility as a tremendous weapons platform. I mean, it was originally designed as an intruder variant, and then obviously it was not modified, but it was used as well for the low-level precision strikes within the 2nd Tactical Air Force. I mean, I think between October 43 and November 44, pretty much the only Mosquito day bombing was by the FP6s of 2nd Tactical Air Force. attacking precision strikes on buildings, Amiens prison, the Gestapo training school at Egreton, Shell House. It could take out single buildings with great accuracy. And I think it's tremendous. Its crowning qualities really are its speed, its maneuverability, its range, and its firepower. I mean, it could operate by night. I mean, during the move through to invade Germany, you got Typhoons obviously attacking German troop movements by day. Mosquitoes are going out at night time and harrying the Wehrmacht all the way back to Berlin. I mean, the only aeroplane that could really do that, and it could work really well with the flare-dropping Mitchell bombers that were out for that period. And of course, it could also be adapted as a coastal anti-shipping strike aeroplane. It was developed to take the 6-pounder field gun, the FB-18. There was nothing it couldn't really do, and it combined the best elements, I think, really, of the bomber and the fighter version. But it was that range that I think was the real crowning glory for it in many, many ways. Nothing it couldn't do.
Yeah. So what the fighter bomber armament? So we've got. Well, could you describe what armament?
Yeah, I mean
could take?
the FB-6, the fighter bomber, was it really was a step change in the in Mosquito capability, because it introduced what they called the new universal or basic wing, and this was stressed to a much higher factor. It was about 8G. But it incorporated hard points for underwing loads at rib 8. So you could carry bombs, you could carry rockets, you could carry depth charges. And it had a bomb bay, obviously, just after the cannon. And, this really maximised its, its potential as a war machine. And it could do so much.
When you're restoring something like that, I mean, is there a market out there for cannon and Browning guns? Where do you source those from? if they're in the frame you've got.
That's a really good point, because when you're restoring the aeroplane, you need to. We want it to look as authentic as possible, but it's also got to be structurally sound. It's got to be safe, and incorporating real cannons and real machine guns would be more of a challenge. There are some out there, but we opted to have replicas manufactured, and the 20mm cannons, and they were done by a chap at Shuttleworth Collection who did some for their Mark V Spitfire, and they really looked the part. And the machine guns at Minot's, we've not managed to manufacture the whole thing, but we had, again, Jerry Mears, who manufactured the barrels and the flash eliminators, the bits you see poking out the front, which give all the impression of being there. We've got a project to manufacture the rest of the guns. That's on the go at the moment. But yeah, finding things like that can be a challenge. It really can. Also, I should also mention, sorry, we've restored the bomb dropping capability as well. We manufactured some glass fibre 500-pound bombs, and we managed to get the bomb release circuits to work again. So we do demonstrations on open days of bomb dropping. Someone comes in and they can allow to remotely press the release button, and that works really well. So trying to bring it back to life, really.
Yeah, well, that's something I've noticed when I've been to the museum. You go around, and the volunteers there, they're absolutely keen and willing to bring everything you've got on display there back to life, and their knowledge and their passion absolutely comes through every time. They're clearly, as I seem to be keep mentioning, they're very proud of what they've done. I mean, with respect to this aircraft here, I mean, is there an aspect of it that you're particularly proud of?
I think, obviously, the main thing is the fact we managed to make it into a complete aeroplane at all. I mean, we look at it outside and you see it sitting there and you think, well, it really does look like a Mosquito FP6. How did we do that? But yeah, there are certain bits of it that I think we're probably more proud of than others. The canopy perspex really sets it off. That's brand new. That was supplied by Avspex in New Zealand, because we have a good relationship with them. But it was routed and put into position by one of our volunteers called David Alcock. You may have met him. He's about 82. He'd been to Havilland Apprentice, and his specialism was perspex. And it took him about a year to fit that, because he didn't want to crack it or abrade it or damage it. But the end result is absolutely stunning, and it really sets the whole thing off. And I think the attention to detail, we've strived as hard as possible to represent the aeroplane as it should be. And it's trying to find missing bits that I know people will notice aren't there. An example of that is the The engine side cowlings, just forward of the exhaust ports, you've got a little rectangular opening. Well, that's for the inner exhaust shroud. They're really hard to obtain, and we couldn't find any in the UK, but some were found in New Zealand for us and were shipped back and restored, and they're now fitted. So we've got that detail that's correctly there, and I think the overall finish of the aeroplane has come out very well too. We did a lot of work to establish exactly what the original code letter was when it was serving on 605 Squadron during the war. It flew one operational sortie in about May 45. It was the personal aircraft of 605 Squadron's commanding officer, a chap called Angus Horn. And we weren't sure what the individual letter would have been. It was UP on the squadron. And when it served in Germany after the war with 4 Squadron, they were renumbered as, they were 605 but renumbered as 4. And they retained the UP code letters. And it was UPG when it served with 4 Squadron, but when it came back to us, we restored it and we thought it must have been G during the war because we couldn't establish what it was. But I managed to track down Angus Horn's logbooks just over 2 years ago, and that gave us the correct letter, which was N. So we had to change that G into an N. It's just small things like that, just trying to show that attention to detail and giving that correct impression, really.
Yeah, and again, that's something I notice when I visit, that attention to detail is across the board. What future restoration projects do you have on the horizon in general for the museum?
On the Mosquito front, they're like, it's like the Forth Bridge, really. We did the B-35 about 40 years ago. We're now having to start it again. We're doing another cosmetic, but a basic overhaul of the metal components on the aeroplane. The fabric is still good, that will retain, but that's going through a program now. We're doing quite a bit of work on our Horsa glider, as I'm sure you saw when you came up last time. That's coming on great guns. We're going to begin restoration, hopefully in the next couple of years, of our Vampire FB5 VV217, which was the aircraft flown by John Derry post-war, flying from Hatfield. It won the Cape Montana Trophy back in the late 1940s and was a pretty important aircraft for Vampire development. So we've got that going on. We're doing some more work on the 125 business jet. We've got the 3rd example built, the first production one. That's having some major work done to that within the next few years. And our Dragon Rapide, that's coming on really well. You probably saw that. That should be reassembled within the next 18 months. So a lot going on, really.
So there's no shortage of projects to apply that pride and passion to.
No, exactly. It's just trying to establish which ones are more, if you wish, in need of work at this stage. So we're doing a big collection review now to work out what the priorities are going to be.
Yeah. So some decisions will have to be made, I'm sure.
Well, they will indeed. They will indeed.
So how can people support your restoration efforts and the museum?
Well, first of all, I'd urge you to come and see us. Support our events. We've got things on our website, and we do a lot of social media as well. But just come up and have a look. I mean, we love to see you. We'd love to talk to you, tell you what we're trying to achieve. We have a number of events throughout the year. We have concert events. We have rollouts. There's always something going on. So check our event site on the website, and we'd be glad to see you.
Yeah, and I do urge people to go and see it. As soon as you enter, you can feel and you can see. I keep mentioning it: pride, passion, authenticity, a real application of heritage values.
Absolutely.
It is it's a remarkable place, and of course, just the history of the site itself. I mean, could you just give us a little bit of background if people don't know the history of the site itself?
Yeah, well, it's the site itself goes back to the Domesday Book. The current property is 17th century, and Charles II lived in there for a long period. And the story goes, as I'm sure you're aware, that Nell Gwyn occupied one of the cottages at the very back. Later on, Johnny Churchill was there as well, Sir Winston's mother, and of course Sir Nigel Gresley, who was responsible for the other streamlined product that come from Salisbury Hall, the Mallard locomotive. De Havilland moved there in October 39. So, and they were there until the end of the war, basically, on design and development work. So it's got a long history, really.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Ian. That's a fantastic presentation of this particular aircraft and the valuable work that you're doing at the museum. And people, please do go and support.
Please do. You're welcome anytime.
Thank you very much. Thank you. If today's conversation has sparked your interest, you can find more information about the work at the de Havilland Aircraft Museum at www.dehavillandmuseum.co.uk. Thanks for listening to the Fighting High podcast. You can follow Fighting High on X using @FightingHigh. Visit fightinghigh.com for details about books and blog posts, and follow the Fighting High publishing page on Facebook. If you'd like to keep up with my work, you can follow me, Steve Darlow, on X using @SteveDarlow.